You need to know this. Republicans in the Senate have been obstructing a vote on the 9/11 first responders health care bill for weeks now. They claim they object to the process by which the bill is being debated in the Senate. However, thanks to some research by Think Progress, the real reason why Republicans oppose the bill has now been uncovered. The Chamber of Commerce tells them too. Here to give us some information on the truth behind the Republicans' filibuster of the 9/11 first responders bill is Lee Fong, reporter and blogger extraordinaire for Think Progress. Lee, it actually says blogger extraordinaire on the prompter. I wrote it there. Welcome. Great to have you with us, Lee. Tell us, first of all, just frame the story. Give us the backstory here for people who may not have been following us.
Sure. Well, you know, for years now, Democrats have been proposing a bill in Congress to compensate the first responders, the people who rushed to ground zero to dig bodies out of the rubble, to help folks that were injured, and also just clean up a lot of that mess. And because they inhaled a lot of toxins and other chemical substances, they've developed horrible complications, cancer, what have you. And what this bill does is basically help pay for the workers' comp, because a lot of these folks can't work, and also pay for some of their medical bills because they've developed various serious forms of cancer and other diseases. But for the past couple of years, actually, Republicans have been blocking the bill. On the House, earlier this year and last year, Democrats repeatedly tried to bring this bill to a vote, and Republicans, ironically led by New York's own Peter King, blocked the bill. He was the floor leader. In
the House of Representatives.
In the House of Representatives.
He will become the head of the Homeland Security Committee in a few weeks.
And he says we need to honor 9/11 by first investigating American Muslims. At the same time, his only priority for the past year has, in terms of 9/11, has been blocking this bill. He was literally the floor leader here, and he was whining and saying, you know, I don't like the way Democrats are bringing this up. They're using this procedure called under suspension, and I don't like it that way, so I'll kill the bill. In the Senate, Republicans have come up with every excuse in the book, saying that this bill is basically welfare. It's a new entitlement program, just saying that they don't like the pay-fors.
But there's a real reason here. And
That's
it's the real reason that you're not hearing about frankly, I saw a report on one of the other cable systems just an hour ago. Not one word about what you're going to tell us right now.
That's right. The Chamber of Commerce has been secretly lobbying against this. It's very under the radar. They've been sending a letter to members of Congress. They've dispatched their lobbyists, because they have in-house lobbyists, to walk the chambers of Congress, contacting lawmakers because they don't like the way the bill is funded. It's a deficit-neutral bill. It won't add a dime to the deficit, because what the bill does is that they end a tax loophole where foreign corporations that make profits off interest or dividend, they use this loophole where they funnel that money through another country, a tax haven, and they pay no American taxes on those profits made here in America.
Which is incredible, given that you know, the companies are sitting on trillions of dollars in cash right now, so they've got to be making huge amounts of money on interest and dividends. And if they're a foreign company, they're paying no taxes in the United States, even though they're generating that revenue in the United States, using the infrastructure of this nation to do it. And the Republicans are doing the bidding of the Chamber of Commerce. This is fundamentally un-American.
Well, it's unpatriotic. You know, that's why the Chamber exists, because no corporation, whether American or foreign, would ever want to put their name on this. They wouldn't say, you know, hey, I'm ExxonMobil, or I'm BP, or Goldman Sachs, what have you, and I want to oppose this bill.
Right.
What they do is they funnel millions of dollars into trade associations like the Chamber, particularly the Chamber.
So the Chamber whitewashes it.
It whitewashes it.
We have about a minute and a half left, and there were two interesting things that you found in your research. One was about Scott Brown, and the other was about World War II in the Chamber. Can you just quickly give the...
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't actually new for Republicans either. Scott Brown had the chance to help Massachusetts first responders in 2001 who rushed to ground zero to help out.
When he was a state legislator.
When he was a state senator. And he was the only member of the state legislature to vote against the bill, just like he's voting against it today. And he made that same junk argument about fiscal responsibility.
So he's apparently been in the pocket of the Chamber for a while, or at least that would
Well, actually, this is a different. In that case, he was arguing about fiscal responsibility, but 3 weeks later, he placed an earmark for a golf course next to his house in Newport, Massachusetts. But on this larger point of patriotism, the chamber lobbied against the Iran sanctions bill last year. Even back to 1941, the chamber lobbied against our intervention in World War II. They didn't want us to fight Hitler. They didn't want us to fight Japan.
It's bad for business.
But number one, they didn't want Roosevelt to have more power because they saw him as a threat to business. And number two, if the argument they made, privately mostly, was that if we entered a war, we'd increase our deficit, and then that deficit would have to be paid for by more taxes on business. So human rights be damned, war be damned, American interests be damned. They were interested in only their profits.
In the 1950s, during the Republican Eisenhower administration, business was contributing about 30 to 35% of the total tax, the total expense of operating our government. Now it's down around 7 or 8%. I mean, through the good graces of the chamber. Lee, thanks for coming out tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Great having you with us. It's not just the Republican Party that the Chamber of Commerce owns. The Chamber has also won 13 of the last 16 cases it's participated in before the Supreme Court. You could call it the corporate capture of the highest court in the land. And following President Obama's meeting last week with the top CEOs in our country, they may have a good chunk of the executive branch, too. But there's a larger issue here. The bigger picture is how the U.S. Chamber got this ability. And the way that they got this ability was in August 23rd, it's over here now, August 23rd of 1971, a judge by the name of Lewis Powell, or a lawyer at that time, wrote a memo to Eugene Sindor, Jr., who was the director, the executive director of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, about how the chamber could influence. And in this memo, he had these bullet points, and each one was elaborated on. You can easily Google this thing. Just, Powell memo is all you have to do is plug into Google, and you can read this thing. 1971, Lewis Powell was saying that there was a neglected opportunity in the courts. These are his words, quote, neglected opportunity in the courts. That there was an opportunity to be molding public opinion. That business had the opportunity to do this and wasn't aggressive enough in doing it. Influencing academia. An entire little chapterlet about how to go after the schools and colleges. How to influence course content and the selection of professors and tenure and the whole thing. How to influence textbooks so that they would tell a more conservative, pro-business story of America. Basically, even rewriting American history. He talked about how lawmaking could be influenced through lobbying, that the Chamber of Commerce should be aggressively lobbying members of Congress. Up until that point, they hadn't been. In fact, business had basically taken a kind of back step. He talked about they could influence television and radio, the content of it. How do we influence the variety shows? How do we get Ed Sullivan to, I mean, these aren't the details, but this was the implicit mention. How do you get the people to talk about how do you influence Walter Cronkite? And radio, of course. Books and other media. In fact, actually, he said books, magazines, paperback books, and pamphlets. Books and other media. How do you influence those? Through second party. He talked about the need to influence, quote, the neglected political arena. Right? In other words, step into politics. Maybe even float some candidates. This Lewis Powell memo of 1971 said, and here's Lewis Powell, political power is necessary, that such power must be assiduously cultivated, and that when necessary, it must be used aggressively and with determination. This was the beginning of the infrastructure of the modern conservative movement. Out of this came the modern conservative movement. And 2 years later, Richard Nixon appointed Lewis Powell to the U.S. Supreme Court, which leads us right to the Citizens United decision of January of this last year, where the U.S. Supreme Court had the pinnacle, the top of Lewis Powell's, the ultimate dream of Lewis Powell's, that corporations had rights under the Constitution just like people and could influence politics.